posted a picture of someone going, "I'm doing free art. It's your persona. Just DM me with a comment. It's free. Blah blah blah." It's AI artwork. And then I commented, I was just like, if artists want to do art, should just do art for free. If they're gonna complain about AI art, then. And everyone just freaked out on me. The person was like, "Huh? Huh?" I can't tell if this is a joke or not. Art is a skill. They should get paid, especially if it's a commission. How many times were you dropped in your head as a kid? I was like, I'm sarcastic comments. I'm sorry. I'm an artist. Please buy art from you. Woo. Yeah. Bees. Yeah. 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 Why is that webcam broken? Fix it. There, now it's fixed. Echo, change the light to purple. Gamer subs? You need some gamer subs to wake up, some Wyatt?
Yeah.
You need some gamer subs? Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow.
No?
Wow.
No?
Wow.
Wow! You're going way too fast, bro!
Wow.
Slow down! That's a meme. I'm gonna pour this water out and put new water in it. I think it smells like sitting at the bottom all day. Gamer subs time, bro. Gamer subs.
Wow.
Gamer subs. Blowhole blast.
Sure.
Blowhole blast. Blowhole blast by Shy Lily. Gamers, go. Oh, let's do that meme. Let's get that meme up here. I want the meme. Wrong screen, bro. Wrong screen. Are you guys inviting me to game right now? Who's inviting me to game? Let me see. I don't want to click that song because I think I remember it. It's a meme. Fuck you. Where's the meme? It's a kid and he's yelling. I can't find it. Okay, I'm just gonna Google her. Google will have it. It's a little kid. There we go. Oh, it is the pepper spray. Whoa. There you go. It's pepper spray. It is pepper spray. I thought it was that other thing. No. Boo!
Woman, you're way too close. Woman, you're way too close.
Pepper spray!
Woman, you're way too close.
Hey, I know this kid. This is Dingo Dinkelman's kid. He's a sweetheart. Look at him. He's having fun in this croc farm with all these baby Nile crocs. People think they're killing machines, but when they're babies, they're pretty adorable. See how they're just getting out of his way? I'm pretty jealous. I'd like to do this.
That's cool.
Hey, I know this kid. This is Dingo Dinkelman.
I'm suing U.S.
The title's
immigration.
not clickbait. I am actually suing U.S. immigration. I'm sure a lot of you already know the reason why, but let me catch you up to speed for those of you that might not know the lore. So, hop on in. Let me take you on a little adventure here through this infuriating journey of dealing with U.S. Immigration Department, and in particular, one whippets-addicted, bedwetting homunculus agent there that absolutely just had a grudge against our esports organization, Moist Esports. I swear to God, if anime was real, I'd have enough rage against the U.S. Immigration Department to finally go Super Saiyan. I cannot stand how corrupt that agency is. I've already made 2 videos having a conniption about it and losing my mind like a caveman who discovered fire for the first time. But what I discovered
very
is just
mad.
pure, rotten to the core, blatant corruption.
I should
I've explained the
just admit.
situation in great detail, but I'll give you the very short explanation for it. Our esports Apex squad consists of 3 Australians and 1 American. The 3 Australians were denied entry into this country multiple times over the course of 6 months. one of the reasons they gave us was they didn't believe they were as highly ranked as we stated they were, even though we gave them all of the leaderboards, the official standings, and they could also just Google that if they didn't believe us. But we even had an EA official, one of the highest ranking executives at EA, lobby for us and write on our behalf about how important our team is to the esports for Apex because we are so highly ranked. And US Immigration didn't believe that that guy was a real authority. He thought he was like the fucking Satchmo or something. Like the guy didn't exist.
You're not
they just
high enough
wiped their
ranked
ass with that
for us
guy's
to
entire
care.
resume, just writing him off as some kind of make-believe EA cryptid. We fought a losing battle against US Immigration. The reasons were so fucking silly, and it prevented our team from coming into the country, which upended our entire plans of having them here for the Split 1. Luckily, we got them into Canada. They played all of Split 1 in Canada, and they finished second. So that means they qualified for the biggest tournament, which is the Apex LAN Major, which is happening right now in LA. But since we were denied so many times, they couldn't actually get to LA, which left us with only one option, which I was fucking freaking out about in the last video, where we had to release our team because they couldn't come to the US under our umbrella, the Moist Esports umbrella. We had to release them for them to even have a chance at playing at that LAN. But boy howdy, wouldn't you know it, that didn't work. They were denied ESTA visas. If any of you are foreign and have ever been to America, you know what an ESTA is. It's like a 99% success rate with getting an ESTA visa. Almost no one gets declined. You have to be like a notorious terrorist to get your ESTA visa declined. Fucking Osama bin Laden might have even been able to get an ESTA. That is how easily accessible those are. Yet, 2 out of 3 of our Australians were denied ESTAs. So only one of them, Imti, was allowed to come in on an ESTA, which means he got here while the other 2 couldn't. That's inexplicable. Why were 2 of them rejected, but Imti's was accepted? They were in the same boat, and yet for some reason, it was him that was okay, but the other 2, no, they're in fucking danger. You guys are trying to smuggle in Romulans or something to take over America from the inside out. The land of the free and the home of the fuck me in the face. Like, that is inexplicably stupid. Like, if all 3 of them got rejected, then maybe they had found something, but no, that didn't even happen. They rejected 2 out of 3. So what the fuck could the reason for that possibly be? We speculated it's because they reapplied for ESTAs even though they still had like a little time left on their previous ones, so maybe that flagged it in their system. But that might not be it because Inti still got through but the other 2 didn't. It's stupid. Super stupid. So that made an even bigger problem because getting denied an ESTA means you're basically shit out of luck. So we were going to have to play, they were going to be playing this major with only 2 out of 3 of their players and no coach because 2 of them just couldn't get in. So we were pretty much out of options. By this point, our team hadn't been playing together for fucking weeks because Waltzy and Kyle, the Australians that were declined, were still unable to make it into America. So in a last-ditch Hail Mary effort, we applied for B1 visas, which I think probably some of you have heard of before. And in order to do those, that's an in-person interview with like the actual embassy. And to be able to actually talk to somebody here is huge because when you're dealing with U.S. immigration, you're talking to soulless androids that do not want to be there and do not do their job at all. But we were able to set up appointments for a B1 visa interview for both Kyle and Waltzy in Lisbon. So we had to fly them over the course of like 3 days, mind you, from Canada to Lisbon to sit down for that interview. They nailed the interview, they got their B1 visas, we then had to fly them from Lisbon to America all in the span of only a couple of days, and they finally touched down in this God-blessed patriotic country 2 days ago, where they could finally play together as a team. So as you can imagine, since they hadn't played together in so fucking long, the cohesion was a little rough around the edges, because U.S. immigration slapped us so hard, a biblical smackdown, to try and ruin our chances of winning this major, of which they are one of the top competing teams in the tournament and one of the favorites to win it all. U.S. immigration did everything possible to make it unwinnable, and yet our team is defying fate. We played today, our final group, and we were able to not only place first on the day with 62 points, but we were able to lock down winner's side. I keep saying we. This mysterious squad known as Not Moist was able to, against all the odds that U.S. immigration stacked against us, lock down winner's side for tomorrow. And I couldn't be more proud of this group of gentlemen, of which I am not associated with on any paperwork whatsoever. They are not our team. They literally are not our team, but I am still very proud of this group. through all of this adversity that was entirely unnecessary, unwarranted, unjust, and, dare I say it, potentially illegal, they have still risen to the occasion to perform so fucking well. I want to show you clips from that, but as the title of the video would indicate, I am suing U.S. immigration. We, Moist Esports, are suing U.S. immigration. We've talked with our lawyers and they agree that this is very mysterious, how it ever even got to this point. It seems like there were quite a few no-nos that were committed here, and some protocol that wasn't followed, and a lot of just big red flags, like some big problems, and it just really seems like the U.S. immigration agent handling our case either didn't like us, or just really didn't feel like doing their job. That's kind of the impression we're getting, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest some bad things that were afoot here that really made it fucking impossible for us to get our players into the country. And we eventually had to drop them, which is of course a huge blow to our organization as a whole. So we are suing them, and you know what I've learned through this lawsuit process? It turns out that there is corruption built into the U.S. Constitution itself, where even if we're successful in beating the U.S. immigration in this lawsuit, they cannot pay us out any damages, of which there is a lot. This has been a super expensive process, and there's also so much lost income here because there's so much money on the line for this tournament, as well as there's so many potential eyes on our organization, as well as all of the legal fees. It's so much money that went into this, all of which was burned thanks to U.S. immigration fucking us. And no matter what happens with the lawsuit, they will not pay us back a penny at all. Now, the biggest thing that can happen from the lawsuit if we win is they overturn their decision of rejecting the Australians, which is great. That is a happy ending for sure. But it was alarming to learn that the U.S. government is not liable for any of these damages that they were directly responsible for us, in regards to us. That's kind of crazy to me. So what possible incentive do the workers at U.S. Immigration have for even doing their job in the first place if no matter what happens, they don't suffer any losses? So it turns out people sue the U.S. Immigration Office pretty often, and it doesn't look like they fight that frequently or fight that hard. Very rarely does a U.S. immigration lawsuit go to trial, apparently, because they're more than willing to just settle because they lose nothing. They lose nothing by not doing their job. They can't lose money. All they do is just overturn a decision, which I guess is super easy for them, perhaps. So they just have no problem settling. So, what possible reason is there for any of the workers at U.S. Immigration to even take their job seriously? We also can't even go after our agent in particular who mishandled this case, because to do that, we would have to pierce the corporate veil of the U.S. fucking government. We would have to go through Uncle Sam to get to that agent, which is not happening. That is an unwinnable battle. So the individuals are protected as well. So let's say you had an agent at U.S. Immigration that's just racist. By all possible definitions, he's just racist and is declining people because he doesn't like their skin color. Well, too fucking bad. That person is probably not getting fired because they don't seem to care, and you can't do anything against that person because they are protected by U.S. Immigration blanket. And U.S. Immigration isn't liable for any damages. The best they'll do is overturn a decision. So you're just kind of shit out of luck across the board. It's worth suing U.S. Immigration to get that decision overturned if we win, but I am stunned at how deep and rotten the system is. It is so fucking broken. It is a joke. It is a joke. But anyway, I can't get into specifics here. I'll just leave it at all of these.
We heard you. We heard you.
More general.
We heard you. We heard you. We heard you. We heard you halfway through the video and you're not done.
This video shows a group of men stumbling upon a strange discovery. After digging up the ground, they found something resembling a wriggling surface of a giant pineapple. No, it's not one huge organism, but dozens of turtles stacked on top of each other. In winter, the turtles enter a kind of hibernation, and depending on the species, they can spend several months underground, or in mud. In the video, the soft-shell turtles are seen burying themselves in mud, where they stay from late fall until spring. So it could be a group hibernation, similar to what happens with turtles, but mostly it's just guesswork because scientists haven't made any comments on it yet. Here are a couple of facts for you to draw your own conclusions. First, not all turtles sleep in groups. Most of them sleep alone. Second, the animals are arranged very neatly, almost as if they had a clear plan. Or perhaps this was done by a man. If a person did this, there could be several reasons. In many countries where they're found, especially in East Asia, soft-shell turtles are considered a delicacy and are often eaten. It's likely that people raised these turtles on farms, and it's possible the animals were simply buried during hibernation. Or maybe it's a way of preserving and storing them. Turtles are kept cool to prevent them from spoiling. Weird? Definitely. But breeding turtles for consumption is already an unusual practice. Regardless of why the animals were buried, in both scenarios, the turtles will end up becoming someone's lunch. You know what? Turtles are in danger not only on farms. Every turtle, as it goes into hibernation, doesn't even realize that it might be the last thing it ever does in its life. Meanwhile, here's a gentle reminder to hit the like button. Go ahead and do it now so you don't forget. Yeah. Let's start by understanding how hibernation works in turtles. It's not quite the same as what you see in, for example, bears. Turtle hibernation, as well as that of other reptiles, is sometimes called brumation, a kind of resting state during which the body's functions, such as metabolism, heart rate, and digestion, slow down significantly. During brumation, reptiles may not move, eat, drink, or defecate for several weeks. They conserve energy in response to the low temperature, and certainly don't gain weight before entering this state. Saving energy isn't enough. Turtles need to find the right spot for winter because turtles are cold-blooded. Their body temperature depends on the temperature around them. Once it drops below freezing point, the water in a turtle's body freezes like any other liquid, causing the animal to die. So the turtle's
Just
aim is to
chilling,
find a
watching
safe
YouTube.
place for brumation. In this
Trying to
case,
fix my
tightly packed underground
stream.
mud burrows are a great option for weathering the cold. They're so great that some species return to the same spot every year. It remains a mystery how reptiles manage to survive underground for months without coming to the surface for a breath of air. One theory suggests they rely on air pockets down there. Also, they go through brumation, during which their metabolism slows down significantly, conserving oxygen. Some turtles can even breathe air through their cloaca. Yeah, Turtle Man would be a really weird superhero. So what about collective brumation? Scientists discovered in the 1990s that some turtles brumate closely together in groups, and later studies confirmed this. However, here's the interesting part. Turtles don't huddle together in burrows to keep warm. This is because turtles are cold-blooded, and staying together during brumation, or anywhere else, does not raise their temperature, as it does with warm-blooded animals. In short, turtles cannot warm each other up. So why do these turtles brumate together? Perhaps one reason for this group gathering is to use collective signals that increase the likelihood of coming out of brumation at the same time. Or the available brumation spots might be limited, and turtles brumate in the same burrow in large groups because it guarantees safety. It's interesting that turtle gatherings during brumation are more frequent in northern regions. This adds weight to the theory that brumation spots could be extremely limited. Also, this might have something to do with mating. With more turtles around, there's a better chance of finding a future partner when you wake up. The depth of burrowing depends entirely on the species. Common box turtles, for instance, dig burrows in the woods before brumation, ranging from 4 to 20 inches deep. Even though the site should offer shelter and protection during brumation, these clusters of turtles can pose a threat to the entire population. If the brumation site is found, they'll all die instantly. But we'll get to that in a bit. But here's what I want to figure out for now. Many people keep turtles as pets. Do these turtles also go into brumation? On the one hand, brumation is really important. Experts say that if you don't let a turtle brumate, it's more likely to get sick and die earlier. Christy, the happy owner of 2 box turtles, says that her family has been helping captive-born box turtles go into brumation for more than 20 years. The turtles spend 5 months underground in a state of brumation before being unearthed in the spring. And it seems like the animals are doing great. However, if you look for tips for pet turtle owners, you'll quickly find out that brumating them seems to be unnecessary. They feel quite comfortable in the winter without burrowing because they're not in the wild where the cold would threaten their lives. But you can't go against evolutionary mechanisms. Some turtles get so slow in winter that they stop eating. In this case, it's indeed better to send them into brumation until spring, taking a bunch of factors into account. It might sound odd, but burying a turtle alive is actually a very delicate process. During brumation, a turtle can die if it was sick when it began or had recently recovered. Even something as simple as a cold can kill the animal during brumation. Improper diet can also lead to death. Being underweight leads to death. Being too young also leads to death. Well, you'll definitely need to consult a vet if you don't want to make things worse. They can also help you figure out the perfect conditions for your turtle, which can be tricky. In some countries, there are even special hotels where you can take your pet turtle when you go on vacation. These hotels also ensure that turtles have a comfortable winter vacation and help them safely enter a brumation state. How about turtle farms? Well, brumation is a good thing because you don't have to spend money on food and cleaning for several months. Saves a lot of money, especially when you have a lot of turtles. So for farmers, a turtle that's temporarily asleep is much better than one that's awake all year round. However, you might not need to bury them. For instance, these turtles, which are kept on a farm with enclosures and ponds, actually don't burrow at all. They just sleep on the ground and do just fine. Well, at least while they're still asleep. Coming out of brumation isn't an easy or simple process, regardless of where the animal was, above ground, below ground, in the backyard, in the forest, or a turtle motel. As turtles burn through their energy reserves, they accumulate lactic acid in their bodies when there's not enough oxygen. Humans experience something similar, which causes muscle pain after exercising. Turtles find this discomfort just as inconvenient as we do, and to cope with it, they utilize their shell. More specifically, they use the calcium stored inside it to neutralize the acid and to ease and soothe cramps. There are limits to combating the buildup of lactic acid, and towards the end of winter, turtles start feeling rather uncomfortable. Therefore, when the animals emerge from brumation, they often find themselves completely disoriented due to the excessive accumulation of acid and all the related sensations. This is why in spring, turtles immediately seek warmth to accelerate metabolism and rid their bodies of the remaining lactic acid. Lactic acid isn't the only issue turtles encounter when attempting to brumate. Throughout brumation, turtles become so lethargic that you can simply stick your hand into their burrow and pull them out. They won't put up any fight. While it's recommended that people refrain from doing this to avoid harming the animal, predators in the wild don't feel guilty about that. For instance, American mink actively hunt common musk turtles when they're brumating during winter. Though these turtles brumate under the ice in shallow water, the mink isn't particularly bothered by this. In Texas, other types of turtles, especially box turtles, also often fall prey to predators like dogs, foxes, raccoons, and rodents. Predators take advantage of the brumation period to grab a meal, and the turtles can't stand up for themselves. But let's get back to the turtles that look like a giant pineapple underground. These are Asiatic soft-shell turtles, and they definitely have their own natural enemies. They're tougher than some rodents because the predators of these turtles include smooth-coated otters and tigers. The natural egg predators of this turtle include monitor lizards, crows, snakes, eagles, and wild boars. Humans, of course, are among them too, although they can't be considered natural predators. In theory, many of these animals could dig up the turtle from the ground. Unfortunately, there's no precise information available on this matter. Maybe turtles are just lucky, as many predators of turtles also slow down during the winter. For example, monitor lizards and snakes, they have better things to do than digging into the ground. After all, they get cold too. Florida softshell turtle, which as its name suggests also has a soft shell, is also on the menu of herons. The good news is when the cold sets in, herons fly south to warmer climates, leaving turtles without one of their predators during brumation. In Florida, alligators also hunt turtles, and the Florida softshell turtle has evolved to be prepared for this natural threat. These turtles are extremely stealthy, can move quickly on land, and have a powerful bite. Well, they can't truly compete with alligators, but during the winter months, when it gets pretty cold in Florida, alligators also go into a brumation. This happens because alligators are cold-blooded. It's handy when your predators share the same vulnerabilities as you do, though it's not very handy when the place you've picked for a nap is visible to the naked eye, even to a person. They say you can just stick your hand into a hole. Of course, it's important to know the habitats of turtles and the places they prefer to nest, at least in theory. For example, Chinese pond turtles mainly brumate in abandoned ponds or on land. The land brumation spots are usually covered with grass, providing turtles with shelter, protection, and temperature stability during brumation. So knowing all that, it's easy to find the turtle underground or in the water. Since 2007, people in Chiba Prefecture, Japan have been catching common snapping turtles. If you're wondering what they are, just know they're being hunted for a reason. They're destructive to local ecosystems, eat just about anything in large quantities, and they're aggressive and fierce. Plus, their bite can easily sever a person's finger. However, Japanese hunters have found a way to deal with these turtles and catch them in winter. A hunter simply puts his hand into the pond where he suspects a turtle might be, and it works. This method allows hunters to catch around 300 turtles per year. While this hasn't significantly impacted the population, that's not the point here. Another example is the turtle hunting in Vietnam. When the rare field turtle appeared there in 2015, people didn't bother to hunt for this species cautiously. They just grabbed a bag, a stick, a machete, and chopped everything in their way. Overturned every stone and stump, poked at everything they could, and dug everywhere, just hoping to find the hidden animals. And all because the price of these turtles is too high to spend time being careful. Selling turtles is such a lucrative business that many people abandon what they did and go on the hunt. Villagers in Vietnam often tell stories of someone, somewhere, selling 2 large turtles weighing almost a pound each for a whopping $19,650. There are plenty of such stories, so naturally people buy nets and go out hunting. Or is it more accurate to call it fishing? After all, we're talking about aquatic turtles. While most stories about immense prices are based on rumors, that doesn't stop anyone. Turtles are expensive. Now that you've made it to the end, hit the like button, if you haven't already. See you later. Steve, come here. Hey guys, this is Steve. And this is me, the narrator. The cat's not with us now because, you see, it's cold here and she's not a palace cat after all. While Steve got an hour of the... mean that with age, the birds simply forget they once knew how to do this? Not quite. Even adult ducks have claws on their feet, which can help them climb, for example, a tree. But the ducks are too heavy to do stunts on the Spider-Man level. No number of claws will help when you have such an impressive... body? Why should they improve their climbing skills when they can just fly wherever they need? It's faster and you definitely won't fall in the process. An adult duck will probably not be happy if it suddenly falls to the ground. It's much easier for ducklings. Have you seen how they jump off the cliffs? When you're small, you don't have to be scared.
Fear is not real.
Attention! This only works with ducklings. Although, let's be honest, for kids and adults, the consequences of falling, say from a bicycle, are very different. Perhaps all kids are a little shock resistant, but ducklings also benefit from their small weight. As I said, they're really very light. Also keep in mind, soft feathers, wings, and paws set apart in different directions, so it's not scary to fall from the height of the brick fence. Some ducks even nest in tree holes, and ducklings have no choice but to jump. They're used to it. Ants are the best when it comes to surviving falls from great heights. They are, of course, smaller than ducklings. The idea is the same. When the body falls, at a certain point, the air resistance pushing the object upward becomes equal to the force of gravity pulling the object downward. Then the body reaches its final velocity. And for a human, it might reach roughly 120 miles per hour. You should realize a collision with the ground at such speed does not promise anything good. However, the ant is so light that if you decide to throw it off the top of a skyscraper, its top falling speed will reach about 4 miles per hour. There are people who walk faster. In addition, ants have a durable exoskeleton, so even falling from the Empire State Building won't harm them in any way. The ducklings are not that tough. But they have one more unique ability, which is running on water. Not over long distances, of course, and yet it looks impressive. When threatened, the ducklings turn on the super acceleration mode. They cannot fly away anyway, so they run. And they do it 9 times faster than if they were swimming. Adult ducks have the memory of this ability, but they only use it to take off. And now the really important question. Why only the babies get any special powers? Don't you think this is a little unfair? Well, even if some adult ducks have been dreaming of conquering Everest all their lives, the ability to climb rocks is still more important for the ducklings. This works for every baby. In childhood, any creature has a much higher risk of dying. The offspring can be protected either by parents or by some special skills. Take people, for example. We are born so weak and helpless, we can die from any little thing. We do not have mechanisms to protect us from predators or fur to protect us from the cold. We don't need them because other people take care of human babies, providing them with everything they need. Many baby animals also need protection, but nature took care of that. Take at least little penguins. Have you seen what they look like? Yeah, it's as if they were dressed by their mother, who was very worried her kids would be cold, so she put her grandfather's old fur coat on them. Though actually this brown cover is not fur, but very thick, fluffy feathers that help keep warm. When the penguin grows up, its plumage changes to normal. The feathers are tightly fitted to each other, and from the side it reminds more of short hair. But until that happened, yes, we all remember what happens when you can't change your parents' mind.
Oh my God!
But what happens if you take away the unique skills of the animal? I'm not even talking about babies now. Everything is clear when it comes to them. The result is sad, but predictable. What about adults? Actually, there's a little difference. A giraffe without a long neck won't be able to reach the leaves from the trees and will lose the chance to fight for the female, which means it will die without leaving offspring. After changing the color of its fur, the polar bear will become noticeable in the midst of snow and ice. That is, no hunting, no food, and quick death. Without speed, the cheetah will lose the only advantage that helps it get prey and compete with other predators. In the end, well, you get the idea. No future. However, while for some animals, losing their skills means certain death, others calmly part with them when they grow up. Chicks of Hudson, a tropical bird with a funny hairdo, not only have legs and wings, they also have claws on their thumbs. Yes, something like an inheritance from a great-great-grandmother who lived in the days of different pterodactyls. Since Hudson chicks cannot fly but swim well, they jump out of the nest onto the water at the slightest hint of danger. Generally a solid plan, unless you're hunted by a crocodile. When the danger is gone, the chicks need to return to the nest before the mother notices they are wandering around unattended. The claws come in handy here. The Hudsons cling to a tree and climb to the desired height, but as soon as the bird grows up, the claws disappear. Probably not to interfere with the flight, and while we're on the subject of wings, let's take a look at the chickens. Everyone knows that flying is not their strong suit. But it was not always this way. The red jungle fowl, the species from which the domesticated chickens descended about 8,000 years ago, flies excellently over short distances. Not quite like the eagle, but the result is still good. So why did domestic chickens lose this really useful ability? People are to blame for this. We've bred chickens for so long their flying muscles became too large and their body mass too heavy. Well, you know, humanity had clear gastronomic goals in mind. As a result, in order to take off, modern domestic chicken needs larger wings, and evolution is powerless here. But chickens have another ability that people did not take away. The chickens themselves simply do not know about it. Chickens can swim. Yes, if you watched my previous videos, you must remember that almost all animals on the planet have this skill. But only chickens are so shocked by this. What's going on? Am I in the soup? It is heaven. What? And yet chickens can swim. They just prefer not to. You can understand them. They have no membranes on their feet to paddle properly, no water-repellent feathers, and even their body is surprisingly weak. If a chicken spends enough time in the water to get all of its feathers wet, it'll drown, not being able to withstand its own weight. Well, if this does not happen, it can get pneumonia from hypothermia and also die. Yes, my friends, these are the descendants of dinosaurs. Yeah, dinosaurs are capable of much. Steve, what do you say if we change the angle, huh? In the meantime, let's remember about the most protected cubs on our planet. What can a few gallons of water do to your car? Now, it's not hard to imagine how dangerous a waterfall can be, is it? But that's where these birds hide their babies and hide themselves. How'd they come up with it? I honestly have no idea. The great dusky swift lives in rainforests near waterfalls in northern South America. It's probably the only bird that's adapted so well to the powerful jets of water that it's willing to fly through them twice a day. Swifts spend all day in the air, and in the evening, one by one, they rush into the waterfall. It looks as if the birds had woodpeckers in their lineage, and sometimes they remember this and begin to bump into hard surfaces. Some past researchers didn't even believe that swifts survived a collision with a waterfall, but what looks like an impossible task to some, to others is simply routine. Swifts are born in nests hidden from everyone by a constant stream of water, and live in them all their lives. No raptor is able to climb that high, and who would risk it? Remember what happened to the car?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Actually, just so you understand how well protected these birds are, here's a simple example. This is what happens to common nests that are located in tree hollows. If you don't want you and your babies to get eaten, you have to get creative. And the hornbills have done just that. They too lay their eggs in the hollows, but before that happens, the female seals the entrance from the inside with dirt, droppings, or fruit pulp. And she seals it up almost completely so that only a small hole or slit remains. through which the male will feed her. It's simple. No one will climb into your nest if there's nowhere to climb. A few weeks after the chicks hatch, the female destroys the constructed wall, gets out of the hollow, and then reseals it. The chicks leave the hollow as adults, and it's not as easy as it seems at first glance. You may have been thinking, what about all the waste? And yes, indeed, it is a problem. Females of some species of hornbills dump their dirty litter through a hole in the hollow. If you walk by, watch your head. And yet nature hasn't given many animals any way to protect themselves. The armadillo, for example, just got lucky. It curls up in a ball and that's it. No one will eat it. The rest of the animals didn't draw their winning ticket. Just imagine you have to constantly, almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, think about how not to die. And some people know how that feels. This is a 1940 recording, and this person is busy testing an ejection seat. Basically, he's trying to survive. It's unclear how strong the next push will be, how his body will react to it, whether he will survive, and how long the experiments will go on. In the future, this invention will save many lives. But few people know that long before humans, something similar was invented by frogs. Look, when a snake attacks a clutch, the tadpoles, wow, that's fast. They're certainly not going to wait to be eaten. Normally, future tree frogs need more time to hatch. But as soon as a predator is near, it activates a special escape protocol. The snake creates vibrations to which the tadpoles respond, and within seconds, all the future frogs are rapidly maturing. They secrete special enzymes, dissolving the sticky shell, and instantly break free. Imagine how surprised the snakes are.
Hey, what happened?
You wouldn't normally expect a frog roe to escape. It's like your oatmeal would suddenly crawl out of your plate and disappear into the unknown. With this defense mechanism, the frog parents don't even need to be around to guard the offspring. They can easily handle everything on their own. But this is not the only species lucky enough to have built-in protection for their offspring. Cercopodia are relatives of cicadas, though few are interested in them as adults. The nymphs are much more interesting. They form a thick foam around themselves as if they spent all their time in the bathtub. They create a defense from their watery urine, mixed with a special sticky liquid to build some sort of nest of bubbles around them. The nymphs have adapted to breathe through the thick layer of foam, but most importantly, it serves as a natural barrier against predators. They say that not only does the foam hide the nymphs from prying eyes, but it also has an unpleasant, bitter taste. I don't even want to think that there's a scientist somewhere who's voluntarily licked the insect urine foam, but that seems to be the case.
It has kind of a bitter taste. But the question for scientists was, does the nymph breathe through those bubbles?
Okay, some animals did go to great lengths to come up with these ways to protect their babies. But if nature can be called a school of survival, then here, as in any classroom, there must be its A students and losers. This fish is just a role model, a pile of strange garbage is, by the way, a nest in which sicklefish lay their eggs. Amazing level of safety. And there are those underwater to look up to. The big moth hap is a species of fish that can only be found in Lake Malawi in Africa, or in someone's aquarium. But their main characteristic is the belief that the safest place for a baby is in its mother's mouth. Yeah, seriously. As soon as a predator appears on the horizon, all the fry are ready to hide, and nothing embarrasses them. Neither the fact that the mother is in fact a tough predator, nor the looks of other underwater inhabitants. Okay, it was too much with the looks. But imagine a fry who's been hesitant to start an independent life for too long. Mom, you're 35, get a job already. Mom! But it's not just the fish that do this. What about crocodiles? They do about the same thing, though not on a regular basis. Females don't hide their babies inside their mouths when danger first appears, but only transport the babies from the place where they were born into the water so that the crocodiles don't become prey to other predators. It's usually not a very long journey, but try to stop this mother from wanting to care. By the way, I've come across information that the female sweeps the territory for any dangers beforehand, but let's be honest, if it happens that way, it doesn't help much. Many baby crocodiles die young despite all the maternal care. They're too desirable prey for adult predators. Maybe that's why mothers try to protect their babies as best they can. They even react to the sound that imitates the babies. If you turn it on, you can scare off a female ready to attack, or make her rush to the eggs thinking the crocodiles have started to hatch. Want more proof that little crocodiles are the most protected babies in the world? They have nannies. The Eurasian stone curlews are small birds that are as courageous as honey badgers. They lay their eggs very close to crocodile clutches so they can guard their future offspring together. And don't think that these stone curlews aren't very good defenders. Birds even lunge at big lizards and look like they're about to say, "Hey, you're in the wrong neighborhood, buddy." Crocodiles help birds as well and prey on all predators trying to approach their joint nesting places. It is indeed an idol, and it's all watched by the gavials. They would be glad to carry their babies in their mouths, but only fish fit there, and their teeth are too sharp. Well, they have to make something up. They're still better than guinea fowl. Let's be honest, it's much easier to protect your babies when you're a huge predator. But what about small rodents? It may seem strange, but they use similar ways to protect their young. No, they don't carry babies in their mouths and hire babysitters. They just breed in huge numbers. And crocodiles do the same thing. A female Nile crocodile can lay up to 100 eggs at a time, from which many little crocodiles hatch. This is simply necessary to preserve the population when many of them will inevitably die. But there's another way that crocodiles don't know about, and it's probably for the best. Squirrels, like some other small animals, use the shed snake skin to cover their own scent. They literally rub it on themselves and their babies. Strange. But this squirrel has the same perfume as Steve. Does the crocodile want to smell like a snake? Well, unless it's the best spring fragrance. What happens if I ask Steve to decorate all the Christmas trees? He'll probably freeze to the bones and I'll have to thaw him out. By the way, there are animals that should never be thawed out. And these are... When George Howard, manager of Swamp Park, saw alligator noses sticking out of the frozen lake, he panicked. Losing several animals at once was something terrible. George rushed to the alligators and wanted to pull them out before it was too late. Fortunately, he stopped at the last moment. A quick search on Google and he found out that if he had rescued the animals, they would have died. Alligators are cold-blooded, meaning that the temperature of the environment is very important for them. They can't just hunker down like a sparrow to wait out the cold, so they seek shelter. More often than not, when the weather turns bad, alligators go ashore, bury themselves in the ground or clay, and wait for the weather to improve. But not these guys. They came up with something better. But how do you predict a sudden onset of cold weather? I mean, alligators don't have internet access to check the weather forecast. Besides, even professional meteorologists can't always predict the weather right, but alligators can. They know that in a few days there will be a cold snap, so they stick their noses out of the water and meet the frost face to face. That's because alligators have unique sensors that no other vertebrate has. To find them, all you have to do is look closely at their skin. You see these dots? They sense everything with unbelievable accuracy. Weather forecasters make mistakes in their weather predictions, but alligators are never wrong. Here's your host, Steve, with the most accurate weather forecast in the world. There's going to be a cold snap all along the east coast of the United States. So I recommend freezing yourself off to survive. And now for the sports. Okay, but why stick your nose out of the water? Maybe it works like an outside thermometer that can tell what the temperature is at any time. Well, not really. In fact, alligators just need air because they don't have gills. So they need to breathe through their noses. Yes, they can hold their breath, but only for 24 hours. And who wants to end up underwater without oxygen when the surface freezes? But if the alligators were okay, why couldn't George Howard have pulled them out? Maybe the animals would have been insulted that he was violating their personal space. I was serious when I said that trying to save the alligators would have killed them. It's like trying to move a person who suffered a serious back injury before the ambulance arrives. By the way, don't do that. And even though there's nothing wrong with the alligator's spine, they escape the cold by immersing themselves in the water because it's much warmer. If the animal ends up outside the water at the wrong moment, the combination of frost, wet skin, and cold-bloodedness will instantly kill it. If you have ever swum in bad weather, you know how it works. You get out of the water and immediately freeze. Fortunately, we can dry ourselves with a towel, get dressed, and jump around. Alligators don't have that option. And while you're imagining an alligator wrapped in a towel, let's figure out why the water is warmer after all. There must be some scientific explanation, and indeed there is. The air above the surface heats up faster and moves upward. New masses of cold air take its place. The ground cools down, but unlike the land, water heats up slowly because of its low thermal conductivity and its high heat capacity. That's why water gives up heat very slowly, and by the time winter has come, you can still be underwater. If you're an alligator, of course. As soon as the air temperature drops below 54 degrees Fahrenheit, the alligators enter a dormant state. They temporarily shut down their bodies, sticking their noses out of the water, and wait for things to change for the better.
Becca.
Wyatt. What's Wyatt doing?
I'm playing a game.
You playing a voodoo game?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Voodoo Vince.
Voodoo Vince?
Yep.
Hey, 42 here. In the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean lies a speck of land barely visible on the world map. Today, it's known as Tromelin Island, but for a long time, it was simply called Sand Island. This tiny, flat islet, surrounded by coral reefs and battered by the relentless ocean, is a rather unremarkable place. The sort of sand-spitter savvy sailor would sail straight past without a single thought. But there's nothing unremarkable about this island, because it is home to one of the most remarkable tales in all of human history. In the 18th century, the Indian Ocean was a bustling theatre of naval routes, colonial ambitions, and the dark trade in human lives. Amidst this global scramble, the island of Mauritius, then known as Ile-de-France, emerged as a pivotal outpost for the French in their Indian Ocean interests. Amidst this backdrop, in 1761, Le Outil, a ship belonging to the French East India Company, embarked on a secretive and unlawful mission. It set sail from Madagascar, under the canvas of stars, heavily laden with a valuable cargo. It wasn't spices, textiles or gold, but human lives, Malagasy slaves, natives of Madagascar. Approximately 160 Malagasy men, women and children were on board, bound for the slave markets of Mauritius. The trade in enslaved people was a lucrative business, despite rapidly growing ethical and legal constraints against it. Jean de Lafargue, the captain of L'Outil, was driven by profit, ignoring the colonial authorities' prohibition against such a trade. As L'Outil navigated the treacherous waters of the Indian Ocean, it approached the small, uninhabited Ile de Sable, Sand Island in English, but the tale I'm about to tell has bestowed this island with a new name, Tromelin Island. You'll soon find out why. Despite the island being only 1 mile long by half a mile wide, it still caused mayhem as it appeared on the horizon. The captain had 2 navigational charts of the area. The only problem was, they both contradicted each other, and they were both completely wrong. This, paired with inclement weather, caused the ship to steer the wrong course, and on the night of the 31st of July, 1761, the Outil struck the coral reefs surrounding Tromelin Island. The hull shattered, and within minutes the sea claimed many lives, mostly those of the slaves trapped in the cargo hold. Displate is a platform for artists with thousands of creators from all across the globe sharing their unique designs, paintings and illustrations on metal canvas. There are over 2 million artworks available in the Displate catalogue. Discover new, original art or choose from officially licensed designs from the likes of Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring and many other iconic brands and franchises. Displate is launching a new product line called Displate Texture. These premium textures will be available if you like. I'm super happy with week only, so don't miss out. Malagasy slaves stood amidst the wreckage on a sliver of land in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Their futures now as uncertain as the horizon that stretched endlessly around them. Leadership fell to the ship's first officer, Barthélemy Castellan Duvernay, as Captain de Lafargue had succumbed to a mental breakdown under the weight of the tragedy. Castellan rallied the survivors to salvage what they could from the wreckage. They created a stockpile of materials that would prove vital in the coming months. Amongst the debris, they found barrels of food, tools, and pieces of timber. The most pertinent use of those materials was constructing rough shelters. The island offered no natural protection against the elements, a flat, barren landscape scorched by relentless sun by day and chilled by winds at night. 2 camp areas were established, one for the slaves and another, on the other side of the island, for the crew. Castellan also built a forge and an oven with materials recovered from the wreck. The island offered no fresh water, but the islanders soon sorted that with a Herculean group effort. Over the next 3 days, they dug an impressive 5-meter deep well. But then, the hunger set in. The initial rations salvaged from the ship were all but consumed within a few days, and the island's barren landscape wasn't exactly Mother Nature's pantry. The castaways turned to the sea, where they found fish and turtles, and to the sky, where birds provided some sustenance. These efforts were not without their challenges. Fishing required skill and patience, and catching birds was no easy task on an island with little cover for stalking prey. Yet, necessity drove innovation, and the survivors adapted their methods, crafting makeshift fishing gear from the wreckage and devising new traps to catch birds. Before long, Castellan and other crew members began the construction of a boat using timber from the wreck. In a little over a month, they had completed it, and they named her Providence. On the 27th of September, 2 months after arriving on the island, the jerry-rigged Providence set sail. On board were 122 men, all French crew members and officers. Not a single slave was permitted on board. And so, the Providence party pissed off, leaving 60 slaves behind. Before leaving, they did promise to return to rescue them, but as their captors disappeared over the horizon, I can only imagine that the Malagasys must have felt about as worthless as it's possible to feel. After 4 days at sea, the crew aboard Providence reached Madagascar. Then they continued on to Foul Point, where an unknown number of them died from tropical diseases. Eventually, the remaining crew reached Mauritius, returning to civilization. To be fair to them, they did ask the port authorities to send a vessel to go to Tromelin to rescue the slaves that they left behind, but their request was instantly denied. In fact, over the following years, members of the rescue party would repeatedly ask for salvation for the slaves, but time and time again, those in power refused to lift a finger. And that's the way it stayed for 15 years. The plight of the Tromelin Island castaways remained a distant echo in the corridors of power in the French colony of Mauritius and back in France. Quite simply, the machinations of the Empire and European politics overshadowed the plight of marooned slaves. France had recently come out of the 7 Years' War against Britain and Prussia, and the French East India Company, the Empire's main machinery of trade, went bankrupt and was dissolved shortly afterwards in 1769. So yeah, it's fair to say that the French shit was hitting the fan. The rescue of a few lost slaves was quite simply at the very bottom of the to-do list. It's not like nobody knew they were there. Their abandonment and lack of rescue for what was now over a decade was occasionally talked about in French newspapers. It's just that people simply didn't care enough. This was a time when society was still brutally divided into classes, and to most people, a bunch of lost Malagasy slaves were about as lowly as they came. Having said that, there were actually 2 rescue missions in 1773, but they were both small in scale, and they both failed miserably. In fact, the second attempt failed so spectacularly that one of the crew ended up getting marooned with the slaves on the island. Once on the island, he built a raft and loaded it with 3 Malagasy men and 3 women. But they all ended up getting lost and probably died at sea. So yeah, basically the second rescue mission ended up killing 6 slaves and rescuing 0. Great job. However, back in France, the relentless advocacy of Bartholomew Castellan du Vernet, the first officer of Lutil, gradually began to pierce the veil of neglect. Castellan, haunted by the memories of those he left behind and bound by a promise of return, embarked on a tireless campaign to orchestrate a rescue mission. For years, Castellan's efforts were met with indifference. The logistical challenges of mounting a rescue operation to such a remote and perilous location had proved too great, as the first 2 rescue missions had shown. However, Castellan's persistent lobbying, supported by a few sympathetic ears within the naval and colonial administration, slowly began to yield results. Furthermore, the attitude towards slavery was starting to shift to be more sympathetic within the echelons of high French society, so public pressure was steadily mounting. Eventually, Castellan's campaigning paid off. Jacques-Marie Boudon de la Tromelin, a captain in the French Navy, was finally persuaded of the necessity of the mission after sympathizing with the plight of the slaves. Tromelin was able to secure the necessary funds and resources. In November 1776, after 15 years of isolation for the survivors of Tromelin Island, La Dauphine set sail under Tromelin's command. Tromelin's navigational skill and his crew's resolve were put to the test as they neared the island, contending with the same hazardous reefs that had claimed Luteil 15 years ago. But they finally made it. Upon their arrival, they found a small holdout of human life. The survivors were now reduced to a mere 7 women and an 8-month-old infant. They were fragile, but alive and well, and dressed in garments they had crafted entirely from bird feathers. The rescue party were surprised to find a fire still lit. This same fire had been lit 15 years ago upon their arrival, and it had not stopped burning for a single day in all of that time. How? After all, there was not a single tree on the island. Well, there was a significant amount of wood left over from the wreckage of Luteil, and the survivors occasionally topped it up with driftwood. After bringing the slaves home and declaring them free women, no longer under the shackles of French slavery, yeah, I'm pretty sure they'd earned it, Sand Island was officially renamed to Tromelin Island after Captain Tromelin, who led the rescue mission. The tale of survival on Tromelin Island lingered like a ghost story, largely untold and relegated to the footnotes of history, until a renewed interest emerged in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Archaeologists and historians, with a desire to uncover what really happened during those 15 years on the island, set off to find out for themselves. Max Giroux, a former French naval officer turned archaeologist, and fellow archaeologist, Thomas Ramon, embarked on what they named Expedition Forgotten Slaves. It was actually a series of expeditions. Over several years they meticulously excavated the site, uncovering the incredible artifacts that told a story of survival against all odds. Fortunately for them, since the castaways had left, over 2 centuries ago, a 30-centimetre layer of white sand had accumulated on the island, largely preserving every detail of the castaways' camp. They found remains of extensive shelters made from coral and a makeshift brick called beach rock. Beach rock is a kind of natural cement made from coral crushed into a powder, which is mixed with water and then dried in the sun. They made fixed slabs of beach rock and used them to build stone walls. After a few months, they had constructed an entire hamlet made entirely from coral, water and sunlight. They hadn't just slapped it together either. Their construction was precise, going as far as to position the windows of the buildings out of the typical path of the wind to counteract the typhoons that regularly battered the island. These pseudo-buildings also had kitchen areas, complete with rudimentary utensils fashioned from materials salvaged from the shipwreck or found on the island, including copper pots that showed evidence of being repaired multiple times over the years. Now, it's fair to say that the lost slaves of Tromelin Island were handed a bad card in the deck of life. Already taken as slaves by a colonial power, they were then marooned on a strange island with no natural resources, no shelter, and no means of escape. Their only means of escape, the boat that the crew constructed 2 months after landing, disappeared and abandoned them. Then they were ignored by the same colonial power that saw them marooned in the first place for no less than 15 years. So yeah, they didn't have the best time, to put it lightly. But what the archaeological evidence shows is that these were men and women who didn't quit. In fact, I don't think I've ever read a story that shows more tenacity, more strength, and more ingenuity in the face of hardship. The fact that not 1 but 7 of them survived on this barren hellscape for 15 years is probably one of the greatest stories of human endurance and willpower of all time. So I think the least that we can do is remember and retell their remarkable story. Thanks for watching. Just a quick word to say that I couldn't make these videos without the support of my Patreon members. Consider joining the exclusive 42 Discord community by supporting me on Patreon. It's a great place to discuss my videos with like-minded individuals and myself. The link's in the description, but if you don't want to, or you can't join my Patreon, then please don't worry. A simple like or comment to say thanks would also put a huge smile on my face. Thank you. Hey, 42 here. According to a study published in 2011, between the 13th and 14th centuries, a huge amount of CO2 was mysteriously removed from Earth's atmosphere. And when I say huge, I mean about 700 million tons. Considering our current climate conundrum, news like this should be of great interest to modern scientists seeking to reduce humanity's ever-growing carbon emissions. But unfortunately, it turns out this period of rapid reduction in atmospheric carbon dioxide 800 years ago wasn't initiated by some previously unknown carbon scrubbing technology that modern scientists might take advantage of. It was caused by Genghis Khan. But what was the secret to his carbon quashing success? Well, he killed people. Lots of people. When Genghis Khan's marauding Mongol horde swept across Asia in the 13th century, it was directly responsible for the deaths of an absolutely staggering 40 million people. That was well over 10% of the global population at the time. All that wanton slaughter left vast swathes of previously deforested land to grow back, which in turn locked away enough carbon to measurably reduce atmospheric CO2 and perhaps even cool the planet in the process. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it turns out Genghis Khan was history's greatest climate activist. Now, altering the temperature of an entire planet just by murdering people is pretty impressive by anyone's standards. But that's only one of the myriad ways Genghis Khan reshaped our world. In what is quite possibly the greatest rags to riches story ever told, the great Khan shrugged off being abandoned by his tribe at the age of 8 to forge an empire that, at its peak, covered almost 20% of Earth's land and contained 25% of its people. But, as you're about to find out, Genghis Khan wasn't just some nutter with a load of horses intent on watching the world burn. He was a statesman centuries ahead of his time. Not to mention, quite possibly, the greatest leader of men ever to walk this earth. This is the story of Genghis Khan, the man who ruled the world, nearly. Now, as someone who talks about a range of topics online, the threat of being digitally harassed because of my views or being stalked is quite high. To make it worse, data brokers exist who collect my personal data and sell it to various companies and shady individuals. Unfortunately, none of us are safe from data brokers. Your data is being sold right now by data brokers, but like me, you have the right to stay private and protect your personal data. So, it's for these reasons that I've chosen Delete Me, to keep my personal data safe and help me protect myself from online stalking and harassment. Using Delete Me couldn't have been easier. I submitted a small amount of my personal info, just enough for their experts to then go out there and scour the internet and data brokers for my personal information. Then, after a few days, I received my personalized report. And, to be honest, I was absolutely shocked how much of my info was out there and being actively sold by data brokers. After receiving your report, Delete Me removes your personal data from all of those places, not just once, but regularly all year long. So whether you own a company and you need to secure your personal information online, or the info of your employees, or you have a family that you care for and want to protect, I really recommend Delete Me. Oh, and if you do have a family, you should get a family plan, because when someone buys your data via a data broker, they can also see info about your relatives. Get 20% off Delete Me US consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/40 and use promo code 40 at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/40 using code 40. And thank you to Delete Me for sponsoring this video. Now, I usually start biography-style videos by telling you a bit of background about the person in question, when and where they were born, for example. But I'm not going to do that for Genghis Khan, and the reason I'm not going to do that is simple. Nobody actually knows. At first it might seem odd that we don't know this kind of basic information about one of the most influential human beings of all time. But it turns out that much of Genghis Khan's life is equally shrouded in mystery, and for good reason. You see, when he rose to power at the tail end of the 12th century, the Mongols had no writing system. And their writing system meant that not a single contemporary account of Genghis Khan's early life was ever written. In fact, almost everything we know about those early years comes from a single book called The Secret History of the Mongols. And get this, we have no idea who wrote it, or even if it's true. So, with that in mind, here's what we think we know about Genghis Khan. He was born in either 1155, 1162, or 1167, depending on who you ask.
I don't
Yeah,
want
it's not a great start, this, is
what
it?
Gold?
Anyway,
The gold
nobody
will
really
have
knows for sure
someday.
which of those dates is accurate,
Got
or
it.
indeed if
But I
any of
do
them
want a
are.
housewife.
But the
What
Mongolian
house?
People's
The house will
Republic
have someday.
celebrated the 800th anniversary of his birth in 1962, so 1162 is probably our best bet. Whenever he was born, back then he wasn't called Genghis Khan, but Temujin. And according to legend, he emerged kicking and screaming into this world, clutching a blood clot in his hand. A sure sign that he was to become a mighty warrior. His father was a man named Yasuji, chieftain of a relatively powerful coalition of clans. And his mother, well, Yasuji had kidnapped her from the nearby Merkit tribe and married her. Which sounds pretty brutal, but from what I can tell, that was basically just dating in those days. As the son of a prominent chieftain, Genghis Khan, or Temujin, was born into a life of relative privilege, and he spent his younger years learning the ways of the steppes, riding, hunting, and actually it was pretty much just all riding and hunting. But there comes a time in all our lives when we finally have to grow up, get married, and settle down. For Temujin, that time came when he was about 8. That's when he was betrothed to a girl named Borta, the daughter of a rival chieftain. The match was supposed to bring the two clans together, but things went awry when Temujin's father was poisoned by members of another clan, the Tartars. Emergency healthcare was not up to much in 12th century Mongolia, so 3 days later, he was dead. Losing his father was a huge personal blow to the young Temujin, but as he was about to find out, it was a disaster for his career prospects too. Yasugi had 6 children at the time of his death, but none were old enough to rule. That created a power vacuum within the tribe, and like all good vacuums, this one sucked, especially for Temujin. Your average Mongol tribe was made up of several clans, which were essentially extended families. Yasugi was of the noble Borjigin clan, but there were also members of the powerful Teochew clan within the tribe, and with Yasugi out of the picture, Teochew seized control. To tie up any loose ends, they kicked the surviving members of Yasugi's family out of the tribe, leaving Temujin and his kin to fend for themselves. The Mongolian steppe is an incredibly unforgiving environment. The kind of place where even Bear Grylls would book himself into a nice hotel rather than take his chances outside. For a fatherless family alone in the wilderness, it should have been a death sentence. But somehow, they survived. At first, foraging for barely edible roots and hard-to-find berries, and later supplementing their meager diet with fish and game. But as Temujin and his siblings grew older, tensions began to rise. There were the usual teenage boy squabbles about who could do the loudest armpit fart or who could grow the best mustache, but underneath it all was something a bit more sinister. None of Yasugi's children had forgotten the small matter of being abandoned by their tribe, and several, Temujin amongst them, harboured dreams of one day returning to reclaim their birthright. Genghis Khan would one day be feared the world over for the terrifying ruthlessness he showed his enemies. And it was here that the boy who would become legend gave history its first glimpse of what was to come. Since he was the eldest son of Yasugi and his chief wife, Temujin believed that he should be the head of the family. But his half-brother, Berta, who was 2 years older, also had a reasonable claim to the title. After a series of fallings out over how to divide the family's meager food supply, Temujin decided it was time to act. Along with his younger brother, he waited until Berta was alone, then ambushed him and murdered him in cold blood.
I'm bored.
There's nothing like a bit of good old-fashioned fratricide to make things awkward at family gatherings, but it seems Temujin's siblings were the forgiving type. Because after the death of Berta, Temujin was universally accepted as the head of the family, and he quickly grew into that role. Even back then, at the age of 14, people were beginning to notice him. It wasn't just that he was growing into a skilled hunter and fearsome fighter. That wasn't particularly unusual for a boy of his age on the Mongolian steppe. There was just something about him. Despite his tender years, when he spoke, people listened. Although not everyone was happy to hear what he had to say. When Yasugi's old tribe learned of Temujin's growing reputation, they realized immediately that it could spell trouble. It was only a matter of time before this young warrior returned to claim what they'd stolen from him. Rather than wait for that day to come, his old tribe, still under Tayachuid management, went on the offensive, attacking Temujin's camp and taking him prisoner. It's funny to think that had they done the sensible thing and executed him there and then, the entire course of world history would have been completely different. Instead, the tribe's chieftain went down the whole James Bond supervillain route and kept Temujin around for a while, just so he could show up.
I decided to take the fishies out. Oh, I took your fishy out, and I put them in the split tank with the other girl. And then I took the white ones and I put them in the big tank. And now they all have heat. All the fish have heat.
Is it still going or is it paused again? Is it paused again? Yay!
We did it. It always makes a runny nose. New runny nose, got red noses today? Your noses are working way better? Yeah. They're happy again. Fish. Fishies. I like the fishies. Oh, gee, he's my favorite. Yumi. Taylor tried to sell me a 55-gallon for $50. And I said, does it have a stand? And she says no. I said, I don't have room for it. We can put it on the floor. On the table for it, yeah. But she said, but I can still have the 30-gallon and she'll come over tomorrow. Also, we can go look at an apartment tomorrow. Did you hear that phone call?
No, I didn't.
Do you want to go look at an apartment?
Yeah.
It's cheap. I fell. And then you can ask your OW work or your, I mean, your disability worker, or your mother too.
Like it's bedtime